You're live. Oh, nope, you're late. No, get in here. I love that they just freeze. All right, guys. So this is the Master Stored Procedure Workout. Workshop, not workout, but you know, it could be a workout, I suppose. I call it Master Stored Procedure Workshop because I'm a master and this is going to be an SP workshop. So this session is for people who don't know anything at all about writing SPs. Does that account for most of you, if not all of you? Is there anybody in here that's got a lot of experience with SPs? Okay. Okay, perfect. You're a big SP guy?
Yes.
All right, later. I actually had a guy last time I taught this who'd been doing SPs for 10 years and said, oh my God, I've never heard that before. So you never know what you don't know, right? All right. So I'm going to be talking you through basics and teaching you stuff that took me years to learn because nobody teaches this stuff from the ground up. And so first, I have to appease my vanity. For those of you that don't know, I'm Sean McCown. I don't know who I am. I'm just the guy up here teaching, right? Like I said before, I'm a certified master. I've been doing this for about 23 years or so. I am the originator and chief, whatever you call it, at midnightdba.com, where we have nothing but 100% free SQL training videos. We've got hundreds of these things on everything from SRS and SIS to writing t-sql to PowerShell to we've got a little bit of .NET up there as well. We've got some Windows stuff, everything. And it's all 100% free. You can go watch it. You can download it, burn it onto CDs, pass it out to your user group. You can do anything with my videos except what? That's right, make money because I don't make a dime. And I am the principal and best consultant at Midnight SQL Consulting. And we are now Minionware Software right outside this door where we make the world famous Minion suite of maintenance. Some of you guys got to hear in depth about that before. And Minion Enterprise where we do centralized management. We can, I've managed 1,000 servers by myself for a year with this product. And it wasn't as good as it is now. And that's me. And that used to be me. So, okay. We're done with that. I'm going to make that whole slide deck available to you guys. Really? Nobody? Oh, it's going to be a long 2 hours. Go ahead and fill out your evals now before we get started because I find it just makes things a lot easier. There you go. Finally. I respond really, really well to sucking up. Okay? So I like interactive classes. I'm going to ask questions. Then I'm going to tell you you're wrong, and I'm going to give you the answer. And if you have questions, I'm not here to show off. I'm here to teach you SPs. If there's something you don't understand, raise your hand and ask. Somebody else will have it. If you're too embarrassed, do it anyway, because there's at least 3 other people that don't understand it too. And if it takes up too much class time, we'll do it at the booth after or in between sessions. Sound good? Perfect. No shyness in here. First, I want to start off with a little, what I like to call a case for SPs, because stored procedures are a lot of times thought of as, I don't know, a luxury, I guess, something that you only do when you're absolutely forced, but most people prefer to just write plain, inline, ad hoc SQL, build it, you know, as you need it sort of thing. And that is so not the case. In fact, I've had this talk with so many front-end developers where they say something like, I started the video, right? Yeah, I started the video, okay. Where they say something like, well, I just don't want to write an SP because it's just a small query with a single join. And I get that. I can see how you would think that. But SPs give you so much more than just obscuring things, right? And I'm going to show you this. So they significantly reduce network traffic. I'm going to show you this in the next demo, or in the first demo. They speed up app performance, especially if it needs to make multiple calls. Especially if it needs to make multiple calls. This is due to better caching and also the network performance. They're contractual. We are going to talk about the contractual aspect of SPs and in great depth today, because it's one of the big things I want you to take away is the fact that SPs are contractual, and contractual programming is where it's at. They're easier to alter when problems arise. This is a really big one. How many of us in here are in charge of like production systems? Okay, a small handful of us. So you have a piece of code that's not running right in prod. Maybe it's doing some blocking and you can see the fix, right? And this has actually happened to me more times than I can count. And the code is ad hoc coming from a C# application and the developer is on vacation. So you can't get to it, right? Or it takes all kinds of company politics to get it changed because it's a compiled app and it has to be rolled out, it has to be tested, it has to be regressed, it has to, oh, good God, man, it has to have a backup plan. When you just go, good God, man, all I got to do is add this locking header or something, or change this thing in here and do something, right? And boom, we'd be up in 30 seconds. So SPs give you a great way to alter the execution of queries without having to recompile and then push the code out to everybody, right? They're easier to trace. They're far easier to trace. You take a query like this one. In fact, this is from one of the SPs, but you take a query like something like this that I have seen pushed ad hoc to a SQL box, and you try to trace that thing and find out where the problem is, right? SQL trace, does anybody know how many characters SQL trace will pick up when you get the query text? I don't either, but it's never the whole query unless it's really short, right? So the problem is when you go to trace something, let's say that you've been given the you've been given the job of tuning this database, right? And what are you going to do? Are you going to work on the fast queries or the slow queries? Slow ones? Maybe, right? What defines a slow query? Sure, that's actually the definition of the speed of the query, isn't it? The time it takes to get the results, right? A slow query is whatever you say it is at the time. And I realize that sounds really generic and really kind of really stupid. Really, that's what you call a slow query. But I see people all the time when they say like, oh, well, we want a long-running query list, so anything over 2 seconds or anything over 5 seconds. That's just as generic as what I just said, because I've had queries that ran in 70 milliseconds when they should have been running in 50 milliseconds. And they dropped, and fixing that dropped the CPU by 30%. Why? Because they were being called 1,000 times a minute. So whether or not a query is slow, just because it looks fast compared to other queries, doesn't mean it's running fast. So when you go to trace these things, if I have a query like this, and I'm only getting, say, the first 2,000 characters from SQL Trace, well, it could be one of 5 or 10 queries that have the exact same beginning, but have 2 new joins on the end and an extra little where clause, right? And I'll never know it because I don't have the whole query. Whereas with an SP, if you want to count the number of occurrences of SP runs, well, that's just an object in whether it be Profiler or X events, right? You can just get the object and say, oh, this SP has been run this many times with these parameters, and you can see, and then you can go open up the SP, right? So it makes tracing problems a lot easier. You can store and run real logic. Now, I get the, do we have any front end guys in here? All right. I'm talking to y'all now. So the front end guys always say, you never store business logic in the database. It belongs in the front end. Putting it in the database is stupid. Sure, whatever, right? Go ahead and return 3 million records to apply the business logic on the front end to get down to the 20 you need. Sure, okay. But doing all of that on the server instead of on the client greatly reduces the amount of network traffic that you pull in, right? And it's also easier to, again, it's easier to change, right?
If there's 3 million records contact, how does this reduce much?
Well, because I'm putting the business logic in the database, and so I'm only getting the 20 records back.
1,000 bytes of characters, so how's that? That's nothing against the 3 million records.
Well, because what I'm saying is if all the business logic is on the front end, I'm doing a generic query to pull back 3 million records and then applying logic and only displaying 20 rows to the client.
Oh, I thought you said 3 million. Okay.
Right. So it gives you reusable components. We're going to hit this pretty hard too. Probably not till session 2, but still. They have their own security. Queries don't have security. You can either run it or you don't, right? But, well, I know you're going, and you're right. They do and they don't, right? Objects have security, right? Queries don't. So the problem with that is, in order to run a query that's got like, let's say it's got a 12 table join in there, right? It's got a 12 table join. You have to give somebody access to all 12 tables, right? And any functions in there and whatnot, right? And they may have those tables may have data that they don't need to see. But if you give them an SP instead, you don't have to give them access to those tables. You can give them just access to the SP so they can see only the data they're supposed to. So, and they're storable and movable. That means they can be moved easily from one box to another. They can be versioned. They can be source controlled. You can have different versions even in the same database. They can be schemaed. There's all kinds of things you can do with them control-wise that make them a lot better than just what I like to call the puke of text being thrown at the database, right? So let's take a look at this. Now we can take a look at it. You guys know how to measure client stats coming from a query? I'm going to show you guys something that a lot of people don't know anymore. I think it's under query. And if I'm under here, it says include client stats under query. And when I turn that on, so I'm going to run this 2 ways. This is the SP call, and this is just the query. So I'm going to run the query first. Maybe I should hit execute. There we go. And I get this little client stats tab here that shows me all of these wonderful little stats on the query. And most importantly, right here, bytes sent from client, bytes received from server, right? And where is the other one? TDS packets sent from client, and so on, right? All these really, really nice stats here. And if I run this as an SP instead, you can already see the call is much smaller, right? The client stats actually compares the first 2, and you can just keep comparing them and keep comparing them, right? So this being trial 2, look at the bytes sent from client. Look at the difference there. That is a tremendous difference in bytes sent from client. That's what I mean when I say it greatly reduces your network usage, network traffic, right? And it speeds up performance for making multiple calls. If you've got something that's, if you've got a query that's running 100 times a second or thousands of times a minute, you really think these 2 numbers don't matter? Hell yes, they do, right? You got a busy website, Amazon. I guarantee you Amazon's not pushing big queries across like that. They're using short SP calls. I guarantee it, right? So even if I'm doing like a 2-table join my SP call is likely to be smaller than that join, and I can do things like add auditing to it and more easily fix query problems and whatnot, right? So the case for SPs is a real strong one, and it takes a lot for me not to put even a fairly simple query into an SP. And it's also highly documentable, right? I think we'll talk, I hope we'll have time to talk about comments and documenting, right? But you can even tell what the SP does, who wrote it, when it was written, where it's called from. In my SPs in the flower box, you'll quite often see, especially if it's like a report or something, this gets called from this SRS report on this server, because you need to know what's using it, right? And if you're part of an effort to clean the place up and you go, hey, we deleted that report last month, let's put this one on the chopping block, right? Okay. Who wants to learn how to code? Nobody? Okay, let's go home. All right, so a simple SP. Create procedure. You have to create it, right? So a stored procedure is a stored, I want to say a stored block of code inside the database. It gets compiled. A block of code, though, isn't really accurate because it has several blocks of code in it. I like to say it's more like a stored program inside the database, because it really is its own program. You can do almost anything in an SP. I say almost because as soon as I say anything, somebody's going, can you do this? No. But you can do a lot in an SP, especially if you're willing to put in the time, right? So you have to create it first. Create procedure. It has to have a name. Now, anybody in here have any mild experience with SPs? Right? Okay. So what's wrong with this create line so far? What have I done wrong? I'm sorry? Just shout it out. It's okay. You're going to be wrong.
Name not descriptive, not a descriptive name.
Well, that's good. I like that, but no. Nope. Nope.
Is it not starting on, you wanted to start on line 1?
No, it doesn't matter.
We talked about some yesterday.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter.
Okay. About identifying an error line.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes! Schema. Now, why schema? Bueller? Anybody? Because, now, it's not necessary. I can create SP1 without a schema. But I'm here to tell you from years of experience, always specify a schema, both in every object call, whether it's a table, a view, an SP, a function, I don't care, always specify a schema, because you don't know what an end user's default schema is going to be. And if they call your object and their default schema isn't DBO, it's going to look in DBO and it's going to have to search for it, right? Which A, if there's a lot of systems and a lot of objects on the box, then it's going to have to search through a lot, right? And B, they're not going to find it because it's going to look in their schema and it's going to say, and even better, if there's an object called SP1 in their schema and in DBO, and you want them to call the one in DBO, they're going to call the one in their schema, right? Right. So always specify a schema, except when. When is the exception? This may already exist. Huh? Yeah. When is the exception of when you don't want to specify a schema? There isn't one because I said always. All right. So I'm going to alter this guy. Bam. So this is the simplest SP you can write, right? So you're going to create or alter, right? The SP. You're going to give it a name with the schema as, and then the query. Always put in some kind of what we call a flower box here with these group comments in here, right? With the whack star and the star whack, everything in between it is a comment. Always put the flower box at the top that says what the SP does. You don't have to put who wrote it if you don't want to. But there are all kinds of things that we like to comment in there. We'll talk about that later, I hope. If not, then Jen on the outside of this door has a beautiful session on comments up on Midnight DBA. I highly suggest you go look at it.
So why not have the comments before the alter statement?
Why not have the comments before the alter statement? Because now it's not part of the SP. Now it's part of the SP. Got it? Cool. And what am I doing here? The simplest SP possible. Select 1. What is this going to return, guys? 1. Right. So, how come I didn't put a schema there? I know, that's excellent. Everybody's looking at me like I'm stupid. Perfect. So, when do you put a flower box at the top of an SP? Always. Yes. Comment your stuff. You're going to be nice. You're going to be super, super nice to the next developer who looks at this SP. And who's the next developer going to be? You in 3 months. And you're going to say, what the hell did I do? Right? I promise you. Okay. Let's move on. No, I'm not going to save that. SPs, they hide complexity. What's wrong with this SP? No schema. Here, you get a marker. And you get a remote. Okay, so I'm going to alter this guy. It's going to go in AdventureWorks. Now, and this is a little bit more useful than select 1. I am looking for orders of some kind, right? I don't know. I pulled this query off the internet. So I'm looking for orders of some kind. Now, you can't expect your end users to understand all of this, right? So we're hiding the complexity, right? And I'm looking where customer ID equals 635. I don't know if this is going to return anything or not. Don't really care. Hey, it returns something. And I get my data back. Cool? But this is a stupid SP. Why? Yeah, it's static, right? Look at this. Where customer ID equals 635. So if I have 100,000 customers, I'm going to have 100,000 SPs looking for their orders. That seems like perfect design to me, doesn't it? All right. So with a single parameter. Now, we're getting into passing in parameters. I take this guy, at customer ID integer. Does anybody here not understand the concept of variables? If you don't, now's the time to say. You'll be lost the rest of the class. Okay. All right, so we've got an input variable here, and we're going to use that down here. So instead of saying 635, it's going to be whatever we pass into it, right? To pass in variables into an SP, are we going to fix this guy? Right? So to pass in parameters to an SP, it goes before the as and after the SP name. And you don't declare them like you do in a normal t-sql batch situation. You don't have to declare them. You just say at customer ID and give it a data type. I keep wanting to say a data point because I was talking to a Power BI guy out there a few minutes ago. And you give it a data type. Now, the parentheses aren't necessary. It'll work just fine without them. But I find that I prefer the parentheses because it sets them apart, right? And in fact, I not only like that, I like that because that really sets it apart. Now that tells me you've got input parameters right here, right? So when I run this guy, and in fact, we will, we'll go ahead and do that. So what did we do? 635 before? So I'll call that guy, just passing it the parameter. And did we not, let me do this. Did I not run that? There we go. And so now, and I can pass it in something else. We probably won't get anything with this one. And we did. There you go. Oh, that's right. I generated a whole bunch of new data for it today, so I'm a lot more likely to actually hit something. Okay, cool. So everybody understand how to pass in a parameter, or how to add in a parameter to be passed in. Cool. All right, now we're going to get in the meat of it. Contractual programming. What does contractual programming mean? It means the same thing contracts mean in the real world. Okay?
Did you say you published this?
Did I?
Did you publish this?
Not yet. I'm recording it now. So, let's say that you have a plumber, right? Whenever you call a plumber to your house, he makes you sign something that says you're going to pay and he's going to do this, right? He's found this is wrong and he is going to do this to fix it and it's going to cost this much, right? So what is the contract? I'm going to give you money. You're going to give me a working toilet, right? Easy enough. Does it say how he's going to do it? He's going to say, oh, in the paper, I'm going to use a 6/8 something or other, and I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do that. You give a crap, right? Make it work, right? That's how people feel about the database too, right? I don't care, just make it work. So, but there is a contract there. You're going to be sued if he makes it work and you don't give him the money, and vice versa, right? He has to make it work in order for you to give him the money. Those two things are not negotiable, right? Same thing with an SP. You have a contract. What is the contract here? I am going to give you this customer ID. You are going to give me these 3 columns back. Whenever I give you this customer ID, you are going to give me 3 columns of data, right? What did we have before? Was it this guy? Oh, stop. Write it again. See, now we got to do, we may have actually hit a schema problem there. There we go. Do that. Right there. So, for my hard-earned customer ID, I am going to get an order quantity, a name, and a list price. That's what I want from you. Agreed? Agreed, right? That's the contract. Contracts are made to be broken. Your job is to make sure it doesn't break. How do you do that? Well, let's find a way to break this contract if we can. So this guy right here returns data. This guy right here doesn't. What's wrong? It's a very nice message. I got no data, right? It's user friendly. So there's no, I could have said no customer, right? But what's wrong? One column. And it's not even close to the name that I wanted. In fact, it doesn't even have a name, right? So have I broken the contract? Yes. What does that mean, breaking the contract? What are the consequences? Okay. In the real world, the consequences of breaking a contract are being sued, right? How about in the IT world?
Exception.
Yeah. You're going to cause an error on your front end, right? Maybe it'll be handled and it'll be graceful. Maybe it won't, right? But all the same, you break the application, right? So we can't go breaking the app. So part of our job is to A, set up a good contract, and B, make sure that it can't be broken. Even if what it sends, I'll say, is nonsense, right? You try for it not to be, but you try to have the thing not be broken. Now, everything I show you today, there's probably 50 ways to do it. I'm just showing you the simplest way to get the concept across, right? All right. Everybody understand contracts? Because we're going to, if not, that's okay. Well, I'm going to pound it into the ground. Okay, I'm done with that. Now, what time do I get to stop? Is it 20 after? 15 after?
220.
2:20. Okay. My box is an hour behind, so I'm looking at 2:20. I don't have that much material. So I know, right? So okay, fixing the contract. Oh, look at that. We finally got our stuff together here. I'm going to do that. And before I scroll down, are there any ideas on how to fix the contract? In other words, we'll say maintain the contract. How's that? That's even better. Nothing yet? That's fine. You'll get there. Okay. This is but one way to solve it. I don't even remember what we did in the last one. Let me see if we had that temp table in the last one. Yep, we did. So here we are in the fix. We're inserting our data. And now we're saying if the count from this temp table is greater than 0, we're going to select. If it's not, we're going to select null as order quantity, no data as name, and null as list price. So I've at least got a contract and something the front end guy can say, oh, if the name equals no data, supply that to them, right? Or do something else, right? Ask them if they got the right customer ID, right? No data, try again, right? Ask me later. Possibly. Turn it into a little 8-ball, right? Right there, right? Now, I've made 2 mistakes here. One of them is minor. The other one could potentially be really serious. Can anybody find them? They're both officially on the screen right now. Do what? You mean here? Yes. Is that the minor one, or is it the one that could have serious consequences? Okay, we'll talk about that more in a minute. Can anybody see the other one? It's very minor. No. Yeah, it's a temp table. It doesn't have a schema. But I like the way you think. You're on it.
Are you talking about the reserved words?
Nope. It isn't so petty it's almost not worth it. Get used to terminating your statements all the time. It's not going to break your SP, but eventually one day it might, because they've been talking for years about requiring statement terminators on everything. So get used to it now. That's it. Just get used to it. Like I said, it's very minor. It's almost, I'd be like, but it just bothers me now to see it, right? So get used to seeing it. Now, the SelectStar. As DBAs, we always tell devs, never, ever, ever use SelectStar. Why don't we ever, ever, never, ever, never use SelectStar? Performance? He said no. Hold on. So he said that with SelectStar, you get all the columns, and if he adds a column and I'm not ready for it, then I'm screwed. And the front end is screwed, and so on. Does anybody agree with that? Okay. What were you saying? Hold on.
I was saying that if you pull back everything from the tables that are there, that are being used in the query, it can depend how many records are there in each table. Millions and millions.
Well, you're confusing columns with rows. I could have millions and millions and only pull back 3 columns, or I could pull back 80 columns.
But you can select star, you're putting all the columns.
Right. But there aren't going to be millions and millions of columns. There's going to be millions and millions of rows regardless.
Yes, and then you may have, I may have tables which has 100 plus columns and millions records. So then you have a SelectStar. So
yeah, I will.
You from changing the definition of the hash table dynamically because you might want to change the business logic, but application will see the star, which means depends on how you write the stored procedure. It may or may not matter.
Okay, I think you basically said the same thing he did-ish, right? So why do you say it's going to affect performance?
And be pulling back everything. That's
Sure.
everything all the time.
Right. Okay. So you're all right, and that's the last time I'm going to say that in this session. So, however, let me give you a little history lesson on something I ran across. SelectStar on the QA system. I was in healthcare, so enough said, right? But on the QA system, they had beautiful performance, and in prod, they had crappy performance. And I mean, it was really, really bad. It was abysmal. So the problem is they were doing SelectStar inside an SP, and they had test data on the QA system. And the last column in that table that they didn't even need, of course, was a varchar max that was only filled into like 50 characters in the QA system. And when they brought it into prod, it had up to like several megs, right? And they were pulling back several thousand rows. So you ended up pulling back, 200 and 300 megs of data, of extra data that you needed for everybody who was querying the system. So it's not just about the number of rows, right? Because I could do a SelectStar on 80 columns, and as long as they're all tiny int, it's not going to matter that much, right? But it could be that somebody, and if you're pulling back everything, somebody could go in there and expand a column and start putting more data in there, and you're not expecting it because you're not even using it, right? And it's very deliberate. And like he said, it could easily break the contract, right? Because if I'm pulling back extra data because somebody added a column or, oh my God, took a column away, right? The guy doing the change is going to run it, and he's going to say, works perfectly, right? I got data back. I'm looking at it as a human. I'm not the front end expecting specific result sets, right? So, yeah, you never, ever, ever use SelectStar, even when I've got this guy here. Now, what happens if you do have 80 columns to pull back? I mean, that's an awful lot of columnage here, right? And that's a very long query, right? What about then? I mean, there has to be a situation when it's okay to use SelectStar, right? Isn't it? Wouldn't it be okay if you had 100 or 80 or 120 columns? Why not? Right, exactly. Because I just said never, didn't I? And I meant it. All right. Well, you can guarantee the order of the columns, you just can't change it. Oh, you mean if somebody switches the column? That's a little less important because usually on a front end, you're not saying ordinal 1, ordinal 2, ordinal 3, ordinal 4, right? So that's a little less important, but yeah, I get your meaning. And I'm the same way too. I like it all coming back the same way every single time. So yeah, I've had several times where I've completely mixed up the order. I've completely changed the order in a query than what it is in the table because it makes more sense to me. So yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's do a little review here. When is it okay to create an SP or any object call without a schema? Never, right. When is it okay to start an SP name with SP? Pretty much anytime you want, right? How about SP underscore? DBAs? Can you do it with SP underscore? Okay. What situation is it okay to do that?
You are putting in the system of procedures database, so it will be accessible by everybody.
Okay. So he said if you're going to put it in master so that it's accessible from every database. Does anybody agree with that?
It's kind of a mixed practice because it's better to do double underscore because then you can differentiate
Sure.
what is the system and what is not
Sure.
system.
But does anybody agree with that? No? Well, he's right. You should. When you use SP underscore, it actually doesn't stand for, it doesn't stand for, what was it you said? System procedure. It actually stands for special. And what that does is when you have SP underscore something like that, because you can't start it with a 1, right? But if you have SP underscore something, it's always going to search in master first for that SP. And then it's going to search in the current database. So if you've got a high-level system that's really churning, why have that extra master lookup beforehand? Yes?
In that case, you don't need the TDO schema if it's going to look master first.
Well, you can have different schemas in master. I install my minion product in master all the time, and it's got a minion schema.
I use one at work and it doesn't have the schema on it.
Sure. That just means that, you have the same default schema as that, right? DBO. So SP underscore, there's nothing officially wrong with it, but you are going to add just a hair of overhead. And if it's a really busy system, that overhead can add up, right? But this can also be useful too. So I had something else too. Just slipped my mind. Oh yeah, the double underscore thing. While that's a decent technique, I don't like it because, it gets hard to tell how many underscores you have in a thing. And that's just, that's the kind of thing you want to do when you want to obscure something from somebody being able to call it, right? So it gets really hard to know how many underscores are there. So I don't like that kind of thing. If I just do an SP, a lot of times I'll just name it like that, right? Sometimes I'll say SP. Sometimes USP is also, and even USP underscore. I hate that convention, but it's common. I don't like underscores because I have Homo sapien sized pinkies and they don't reach all the way up there easily. So, but the Java monkeys themselves have pinkies about this long, the size of their middle finger, and they can do it without leaving home row, right? So, all right. Let us move on. Local variables. Local variables can be quite, what's the word I'm looking for? Useful. We still have our parameter to be passed in. Now, you'd have to declare local variables. So you declare, give it a variable name, and give it a data type. In, what is it, 08 and above or 12 and above, where you can also assign it at the same time. So, right, you can also assign it at the same time. So I still do it this way most of the time. Why do I still do it this way a lot of times? See, y'all thought y'all were just going to get to come in here and watch me show off for an hour. No. I'm going to put you guys to the test. Why do I like this better than a single line assignment? Come on, DBAs, devs too. No, just shout it out. Sure, but that's not it. Hold it.
There is one thing DBAs do, they are multi-platform, so it is always good practice to use multi-platform commands so that they can jump from one to another without making.
Exactly. I write software for 05 and 08 and above. And if I write single line assignments, they won't be able to run in the lower environments. Absolutely.
Also, I was thinking multi-database, like DBO dot is necessary in Oracle, in SQL Server you can skip it.
Yeah.
So those practices help because you can pick from one to another.
Sure, you got bigger problems going from Oracle to SQL though, so. but schemas shouldn't be one of them, right? So that's why I prefer to do that. Now, I put this semicolon at the end of here. Is this acceptable? This versus this. Is this acceptable? No. Is it legal? Yes. There is a difference between acceptable and legal, just like there's a difference between legal and moral, right? In fact, I'm going to go ahead and call this immoral. Can we agree on that? All right, so what are we doing here? Oh, yeah. So this is a bit of a contrived example here with the exec date, but I'm assigning an exec date. I've still got this guy here, and at the very end, I'm just selecting the date and then doing that. And you see, this is a mistake. That's supposed to be like that. Let me see what I have. Stop it. Sometimes your tools get in the way, right? So, make sure I got that one right. Yep. So I'm going to save that. Yes. And now, when I call this guy with my passed-in parameter, if I did it right, I also now get an execution date. Now, how many parameters how many variables can you define in an SP? Anybody know the limit? I don't either, man. I've defined hundreds and never come across the limit. How big can an SP be? SPB. Yeah. I have no idea. My biggest one has 5,000 something lines, and honestly, the SMS editor gives out before the SP engine does, right? So yeah, it'll take very, very large SPs, and you can do tons of stuff in them, which is why I say they're more like actual programs inside the database, because they're A, compiled, and B, can contain almost any logic you need, and they have branch logic, and they can call other modules and all that stuff, right? So, all right. I'm skipping that one. Multiple input parameters. It's very simple. Just put a comma in between them. They can be all on one line, but I don't like that because of, well, number one, it's easier to find them like this, and because of what you said earlier, you can comment them, what they're for. The question is, though, how often will you comment them? Every time, right? You will always comment your parameters so that you know what they do, and so that somebody else who opens it up knows what they do. And what are you going to include in the comments? Preferably the acceptable values, right? Here, I would say something like, oh, because it's a bit, right? 0 and 1. And then I'd say, great, just something like that, right? I've got my two acceptable values here. I mean, it's a bit, so you'd have to be an imbecile not to know that it's 0 and 1, but I still put it there anyway, right? Now, how many sessions have you gone to today where the presenter called you an imbecile? Come on, man, a little credit here. So, but this guy right here, right, I would say something like, something like that, right? This isn't just nice. This is essential. You will forget what your values are. So, multiple values. I'm calling this guy with multiple values. To call him with multiple values, you just separate it with a comma. Except, you should also make sure that you alter it. There we go. Alter that guy. I get that. Alter that guy. I get that. You notice how I still haven't broken my contract, right? All right. Moving right along. Calling SPs. There are a number of little conventions we can use here. We can do the simple call that I've been doing all day long. Just give the SP name and pass it any parameters that you need, separated by commas, and you'll get the thing. Yeah. I'm in. Let me try that. And I can do that, right? You can use the exec keyword. Now, why would you choose to use the exec keyword when you don't have to? Because sometimes you have to, right? I'm going to show you an example in the next session of where you have to. But in short, when it's in a line of other SQL commands, you have to use exec, right? Jen likes to use exec all the time so that she doesn't ever have to worry about it. I like to fail it once and then go back and remember that it's in a long line of SQL and then put exec in front of it and then do the same thing again and again and again because I never learned. So you can also name the parameters. You can say exec at customer ID equals 123 and at log equals 1. Okay, quiz. Is it acceptable to not name your parameters? It depends. It's really, really user-friendly, right? It's actually really a bad move to do that to somebody, right? It's like not formatting or not commenting your SPs. And it's even mean to you because I've got some SPs in some of mine where I didn't name them and I have to go back and open it up and see what the parameters are. And I always end up naming them anyway so that I don't have to do that again. That lesson I do learn. But if it's really small and it's only got 2 and you're the only one using it, you're the only one who's ever going to use it, which is like some of the things I write, sure, why not? But I still do it anyway because I'm going to forget in 6 months what those things were, right? So it's best, but do we want to call it? Do we want to make that law? Let's decide. Who wants to make it law to name to name always pass in named parameters? Okay, who doesn't want to make it law? A lot of people abstaining, man. We can't do that. Who wants to make it law? All right, the ayes have it. Let's make it law. I'll push that in the next one. Okay, so. But if you name a parameter, you must name all the parameters. This, no good. Now, how about just assigning default values to parameters? Let's take a look at this guy. He fails because it expects the log parameter. Right? Right. Well, we've got that in another one, don't we? Right here. Right here. It expects the log parameter. I didn't pass in the log parameter. So it blew up at me. Right? Because the contract says, you give me 2 parameters and I'll give you this. You gave me 1 parameter. I'm not giving you anything. Simple, 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 right? It's a contract. Unbreakable. So, how do we get around this? Hopefully, like this. You can assign a value in the pass-in parameter section. I don't know what you call it, right? You can assign a value when you define the pass-in parameter, and that will be used as a default that lets you not have to define that parameter. So our new contract is this. You give me 2 parameters and I will give you this data. But if you don't give me 2, if you only give me that first one, I'm going to assume this other one is that, and I'm going to give you the data anyway, whether you want to or not. Right? So I'm going to paint your kitchen, but if you don't tell me what color, it's going to be pink. Period. Right? I mean, like bright Pepto puke ball pink, right? Just because you refuse to tell me. So when we alter this guy, now we've got an optional parameter Now I get my data back. And as it turns out, I'm probably logging to that table too, right? Because the default is to log. Now we're going to talk about this a lot more in the in the next one, where we're going to talk about how well that allows you to maintain your contract. Because it does wonders for letting you maintain your contract. And we've got like 3 minutes left. So do we want to talk about naming conventions or do we want to talk about comments? Let's talk about comments. I really can't talk about either one of them in 3 minutes. So this is from my Minion Backup SP. Nice flower box at the top. Tells you all about everything I want you to know about. Some of the things I tell you about are features that are in the SP itself, a walkthrough of what the SP does, and something really nifty that I'm the only one that does this, by the way. You can look at all those parameters. See, you can have a lot. Is something like this. I give section headers, begin initial log record, end initial log record. This kind of stuff is really important.